If you've watched any Japanese car videos in the past couple years, you've likely seen this place. This is Meihan Sportsland, and it is often associated with the highest level of grassroots drifting in Japan. It became famous for its insane big entry style of drifting, but even more so due to what happens when you make a mistake. Because Meihan has concrete walls on both sides of the course, when people crash, they crash hard. This high-risk, high-reward style of driving makes Meihan a crowd favorite from all over the world. And last year, I made it my personal mission to learn how to drive there. But before we get to that part of the story, we gotta rewind to the beginning. This was my first drift car in Canada. They were cheap at the time, and this car would end up teaching me everything about drifting. After learning about Mayhan, I came across some obscure tutorial videos of that rarely talked about Japanese big entry style of drifting. I was hooked, but I quickly learned how difficult this style of drifting really is, and I focused on just having fun instead. This led me down a journey of going to every single drift day I could afford, and I actually got pretty decent driving with my friends. But in all honesty, I started to lose interest once my driving techniques stopped progressing. That's when I applied for my Japanese visa, and I had a plan. I gave myself a year to get drifting out of my system, come back, and live that career life my parents always wanted me to. But what I was about to experience in Japan was nothing I could have ever predicted. The first thing I did, of course, was buy a car. With the help of a shop in Shiga, I found this decent 180SX. It needed basic wiring done, but it was a solid base. It was bone stock and exactly what I needed, a simple car I could learn on. The plan was to get used to some of the safer tracks in the surrounding area first. It made sense. I figured I would leave Mayhan until the very end, figuring I'd likely crash there anyway. So for months, I'd spend most of my time going to this place, Bihoku. Bihoku is another legendary track with an incredibly rich history in the drift world. To me, it felt safer than Mayhan since there weren't any concrete walls on the sides. I figured if you crashed, it would be safer going to some tires or dirt than it would be a concrete wall. I got pretty comfortable here, and with it being open 7 days a week, it meant I could go pretty much whenever I wanted. But as things progressed, we learned the truth of what those tires actually did to your car in a very unfortunate way. This was me driving behind him when this happened. I felt like I saw the whole thing in slow motion. Luckily, no one was hurt, but the car was done. I didn't drive for the rest of the day, and everyone in our group kind of agreed that the tire wall was just as bad as Mayhan, if not worse. It was a real reminder of just how dangerous drifting can be. It was funny, after that day, I kind of really questioned what the hell I was doing with my life. Why did I care so much about pushing my driving so badly? What was I trying to prove? I hadn't even driven Mayhan yet, and I saw firsthand the risk people had to take to drive at the highest level in Japan. After that incident, I took a break from drifting for a bit. At this point, I only had 6 months left in my visa, and I realized my time was running out quick. I knew what I needed to do, and a few months later, I registered for my very first Mayhan event, the one that would change my life forever. On the day of, I packed my things and headed with the fear of crashing looping in my head. I just didn't know what to expect. When I got there, I was greeted with a very unexpected vibe. Everyone driving was kind of on the older side, mostly dads with their families, which immediately threw me off. Back at home, drift events were usually a pretty young crowd. Here, there was even this husband and wife couple who would share a car in 2 different classes. Even the organizer was this wholesome lady who would be driving her S13 in expert class. Speaking about the cars, they were so insanely basic. Most cars were stock SR20s with a bolt-on TD06, but you'd even see people run the standard T28. Another thing too is that there were no hydraulic handbrakes in sight. Did I come to the right place? these cars were supposed to represent the most aggressive driving in Japan. When the morning practice started though, I realized it wasn't the cars that were aggressive, it was the drivers. It's obvious that these people were on a whole other level. It is insane to see this in person. But now it was my turn. I pulled onto the track with the full knowledge of what would happen if I messed this up. During my warm-up lap down the straight made my eyes tear up. I couldn't believe I was driving Mayhan. The bucket list dream was checked off. Reality set in though, and I started drifting the back section. But the funny thing about this event is that it was so beginner friendly that I didn't feel any pressure to just fully send it like I did back in North America. There wasn't any judgment or big egos from anyone, and I felt like I could just kind of go at my own pace. And best of all, there were other Japanese people who were absolute beginners just like me, making me feel like maybe I didn't have to be this worried about crashing. I finished my session doing safe, easy e-brake entries the entire time, and the crash never happened. But the biggest surprise was I wish I could describe what this community felt like. I realized it wasn't the drifting anymore. It was the people that welcomed me with open arms. The kindness of everyone, the respectful dead silence during the lunch break, just listening to nature, the lack of egos. It was so different compared to drifting in North America. And for the first time, I felt like I belonged at a drift event. They finished off the day with rock, paper, scissors, making sure every driver went home with the prize. I happened to win a box of oranges from a local farm that always sponsors the event. During the track cleanup, I decided that if I only had 5 more months left in Japan, I needed to take this seriously because this felt like what I had been searching for all my life. The next couple months was the most amount of practice I have ever done. Regardless if it was Hitamigo, semi-style, or an end-style day, I was there. And on those days, I would just do the entry over and over and over again. I must have done like 200 laps of Mayhan in that span of time. And with the guidance of coaches and local pros, I actually got pretty decent. With the amount of driving I was doing, I started racking up small wins. First in beginner class and even getting multiple podiums in middle class. As time went on, I learned about a qualifying day for an event called Kansai All-Stars, the largest drift competition held at Mayhan. Kansai All-Stars is where all the top drivers from every Kansai prefecture battle it out to see who is the best driver at Mayhan. It is incredibly competitive, but with me living in Osaka, I realized I was actually eligible to try and get a spot for the event, but this meant I had to pass through qualifying. Realizing this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, for the first time, I heavily modified my car. I cut up the body so I could fit wider tires and I got new coilovers. I ran a gripped-up tire setup with Bolinos all around. The car was transformed overnight at my buddy's shop. As ridiculous as it sounded, I wanted to see if all that practice would allow me to pass through qualifying to drive the Kansai All-Stars event. It was all or nothing. The day of the qualifying was split up to practice in the morning and the qualifying would happen right after the lunch break. But first time out in the car, it felt completely wrong. I had made the mistake of changing way too much on the car all at once. The balance was all off and I didn't trust the car anymore. With the pressure on, I tried changing my alignment trackside with no avail. Even worse, Osaka is the most stacked prefecture out of all of them. And here I was with a stock engine. I ran out of time during my lunch break and I accepted that I would just try my best and pray. I finished my qualifying round unfortunately knowing I didn't make it. The car just didn't drive right. Looking back, I was definitely a bit naive to think I had a chance. But near the end of the day, there was still open lapping. After talking to some of my friends, they recommended me lower my front tire pressures and dial in some of my suspension settings. I took the car out for the final session and this is what happened. just clicked. It felt perfect. Qualifying was over already, but it didn't even matter. I was more than satisfied knowing that for the first time, I pulled off entries that could rival some of the locals. And on top of that, it was beautiful to enjoy the sunset drive home with the car in one piece. I never ended up driving Kansai All-Stars, but one of the judges actually came up to me afterwards and asked if I would be trying again next year. I had to break it to him that without the right visa, I couldn't stay in Japan. It was clear that my plan of getting drifting out of my system completely backfired. Driving Mayhan only reignited my passion for pushing my driving that much harder. My new goal is to one day compete at Kansai All-Stars alongside all the other local legends. But even if I never do, what I got to experience in the past year, it was more than enough. Thanks for watching, and please consider subscribing.